Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Committee of Council. For committees, just awareness, we've changed the order slightly. We've moved Community Services section up first, and then that'll be followed by Economic Development, Public Works, and Corporate Services. Our first item of business at approval of agenda, I have one item that I would like to add. Under announcements, item 4.2 would be an announcement for a long-term acknowledgement. We'll move right into, anybody else have approval of agenda? Councillor Miles.
I'd like to add an item to the in-camera agenda. Unfortunately, I don't see a member of our legal staff here for me to vet it by, but if we could add an in-camera agenda about a property matter.
Mr. Fay.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that would be the Municipal Act exemption is a possible acquisition or disposition of property by the municipality or local board. But I would suggest we wait until you speak with the city solicitor, because under council's procedure bylaw, closed session business needs to be approved by the city solicitor in keeping with the Municipal Act.
Okay, so if we could add it, I did have the discussion with Mr. Schlang previous to this. So.
And does it follow under those guidelines that the clerk just mentioned? So we'll add it under condition right now, and you'll still discuss with the city solicitor.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, Councillor Miles, you move approval of agenda. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is declarations of conflict of interest. Anybody have any conflicts they'd like to declare? Seeing none. Our consent agenda, we're pulling 9.2.1 because there's a staff presentation on that. Anybody else like to? Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 6.2.3.
6.2.3. Okay, Councillor Sprovieri, you'll move the consent agenda. All in favor? That carries. Under announcements, our item 4.1, I'll turn it over to Councillor Bowman to lead the Building the Future Network Breakfast and Economic Update. Councillor Bowman. Chair Bowman.
Yes, we have one announcement today, and Denise McClure is going to make the announcement. Denise, come on down, and I believe that everybody on council was given a card this morning as well. Thanks, Denise.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this news with you. On your desk, you will notice an invitation. Next week, the Economic Development and Culture team will be hosting the Brampton Economic Update Breakfast at the Rose Theatre. We have partnered with RBC to host this event. Senior economist Robert Hogue will speak about how changes in the international trade market can help Brampton businesses thrive. Guests at the event will also receive a copy of the 2016 Brampton Economic Review, which will be unveiled with a press release that day as well. And the response to the event has been overwhelmingly positive. We have over 200 people registered, including Canon, a large number of developers from the industrial, commercial, investment, real estate community, partners from Toronto Global, TO Health, Rick Center, Sheridan, the BIA, and Beaux-Arts, and various levels of government, including Mayor Alan Thompson from the town of Caledon. And with the new sector-based approach to economic development, we will be doing these types of events throughout the year. Late June, we are hosting an event for health and life sciences, and on August 17th, we are hosting our second annual celebration of youth entrepreneurship. In the fall, we will host events for food and beverage, advanced manufacturing, innovation and technology, and the central area. We feel events like this are a great way to network and showcase the city. If you have any questions, I hope to see you on Tuesday morning at the event, but if you have any questions, need further information, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Willens, you'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, just more of a comment. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. It's great reaching out to the community, and thank you from the Vice Chair of Economic Development. It's great. Sounds like a great event.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other comments or questions, I will pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Do you need to move the report? Okay. All right, item 4.2 is long-term acknowledgement. I'll lead this one off. I'd like to start by saying that Ed the Gentle Giant, or Steady Eddie, has a quite calming demeanor with a hint of wit and humor and a huge heart. Known as compassionate, loyal, ethical, committed mentor, coach, patient, and supportive. Ed McNeese, District Manager West, for 35 years of service with the City of Brampton's Recreation Division. Ed started with the city in 1981, working at Century Gardens as a facility general operator, and during the course of his career, he worked at many facilities, including roles as a facility supervisor at the Heart Lake family of facilities, Fletcher Sportsplex, until being promoted to the District Manager West in 2010. Committed for health and safety excellence, leading the development of the Emergency Procedures Manual for recreation centers and his acknowledged support and assistance during major emergency events such as the ice storm in 2013 and the blackout in 2003. A passion to make a difference, always extending a helpful hand for his team and teammates and residents to provide the best customer service and wanting to make a difference in our community. Known for operational savvy and respected for his team support, work ethic, and dedication, Ed has developed and maintained dedicated connections with sports groups, schools, customers. He's instrumental in fostering excellent relationships and creating a resolution-oriented environment with CUPE. Ed will definitely leave a positive imprint and legacy in recreation, and we wish him the best as he starts his new chapter at his new home in Grand Bend with his wife Barb. Passion for new hobbies and spending time on his new boat. Ed, it is truly my honor to sit here today and say congratulations. I've known you almost all of my life. If I was running the halls at Loafers Lake Rec Center, turning the corner and seeing this big man standing in front of me saying, "Michael, slow down." Or I was riding my skateboard in Jim Archdeacon and you said, "Michael, no riding your skateboard in Jim Archdeacon." I've talked to many of my friends that are still my friends today, that were your first, you were their first boss. Jason Millay, Colleen Wynn, Jeff McCoy, Michelle Cooper, who always said that you were the best boss they ever had. And they send all of their congratulations to you. And speaking to my father, over the course of his 30 years as a counselor, there was nobody in the city of Brampton that were dealing with Parks and Recreation, dealing with the customers, that he had more respect for than you. You made a huge difference in our recreation. The passion that you gave to our customers, our residents, I don't know if we'll ever see anybody like you in the city of Brampton again. Ed's last day at work will be May 26, 2017. Please join us in celebrating Ed's retirement on May 24th at 4 to 6 p.m. at Century Gardens Lawn Bowling Facility. Members of committee, please stand and give ovation to Ed McNeese. Ed, anything to say?
Just a few words. To the mayor and members of council, thank you so much. I've had the fortunate opportunity to serve the residents of Brampton for 35 years and ongoing. It's been an honor to work with so many amazing people. The community groups, our community services management team, our recreation management team, our supervisors, full-time staff, our part-time staff who are so valuable, and certainly not least our volunteers are an amazing group of people that volunteer and make everything that we have value to make it happen. Thank you all so much for your support, and please accept my appreciation for the many opportunities, friendships, and priceless memories. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have no delegations. Under reports, we have item 6.2.1, report from Kathy Duncan, Manager, Animal Services, Community Services, Peter Fay, City Clerk, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, updated Ontario Wildlife Damage Compensation Program. Would anybody like to, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wish to point out to the committee's attention, this is a new requirement that the province put into effect as of January 1st of this year, an update to an existing program in terms of wildlife damage compensation. And the recommendations speak to implementing it for the city of Brampton, although we've only had, I believe, 3 wildlife damage claims since 2010. There are 2 operative recommendations in the staff report. One is to pass a bylaw to appoint the Manager of Animal Services as the municipal investigator for the purpose of implementing and administering this program. The third recommendation was to pass a bylaw to amend the Delegation of Authority bylaw. In speaking with Legal Services, we've determined that it's probably not necessary to actually pass the bylaw to amend the Delegation of Authority bylaw. By passing the bylaw set out in Recommendation 2, which is on your screen, that will allow us sufficient authority to implement and administer the municipal responsibilities under the program. So my suggestion would be to committee is that they adopt Recommendation 1, which is to receive the report, and Recommendation 2, which is just to pass the bylaw to appoint the Manager of Animal Services.
Okay. Councillor Willens.
Just a quick question. I read the report. What I found interesting, maybe Kathy can answer it. Under the how the applications are assessed, one of the damage reports, if the damage was not caused by a dog. Now, is there not a lot of wild or stray dogs that have caused some grief for farmers or for wildlife?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Willens, this particular program was implemented to replace the Livestock, Poultry and Honeybee Protection Act. So there is provision under the Livestock Protection from Dogs Act to compensate people with respect to damage specific to domestic dogs. We don't have a significant problem with stray or feral dogs in Brampton, but there have certainly been very public situations across Ontario in the last couple of years where stray roaming dogs have had interactions with livestock which have resulted in the farmer taking action which they're permitted to.
Okay, so this specifically just speaks to domestic dogs?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other questions. Councillor Willens, you'll move recommendations 1 and 2. All in favor? That carries. On to item 6.2.3, the Public Information Center, number 1, Queen Street, Rapid Transit Master Plan from downtown Brampton to Highway 50. Councillor Sprovieri, you pulled this from consent. Councillor Sprovieri, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pulled this item just to get some clarification, Mr. Chairman. It's great to see that we're planning for the future and with this line on Queen Street now up to Highway 50. The question I have is whether we're working with York Region to see if they are cooperating to run the line right to the new Vaughan Center, to the subway that's going to be opening there next year. When it be this year, I don't know when exactly.
Through the chair, yes, we will be working with them. We're in ongoing discussions with them about the corridor, so we are definitely working with York Region, and we will be looking at the Vaughan Corporate Center as a possible termination for this.
Yeah, because going to Highway 50 really doesn't really go anywhere. It's not much of a place. So that's our objective then.
Yeah, through the chair, that is our objective.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Sprovieri, you'll move the report.
Certainly.
All in favor? That carries. There are no other new business, no correspondence. Council question period. Any councillors have any questions on relating to community services? Seeing none, I'll hand the chair over to Councillor Bowman to take us through economic development.
Okay, we will move on to the Economic Development and Culture section. We'll begin with 8.1.1, a presentation by Paul Aldonade, Expediter, Central Area, and it's the update. So we get a good story map here. So Paul, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Joining me today is Julie Vanderwolf. She's part of our research team in economic development. Also Daniel Bouchon from our Economic Development Office as well. They are together with Tyson May, who's not here today. They make up a big part of our research analysis team in economic development. And basically the purpose of this presentation is to show off some of the work that they've done using some of the new software that we have available for us to use. I think it's the kind of software that we can continue to use as we tell and brag about Brampton and tell our story about Brampton. It's more visually pleasing. It's about presenting those dry statistics that you often see together with the visual elements and mapping elements all together as one PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, not PowerPoint presentation, as one story map. I certainly intend on trying to use this data and applying this software to the health partnerships initiatives that we're looking after, and I think it would be something that I think other teams in the city will also find useful. So beginning with this first slide, what we use to demonstrate this software is we're just presenting a bit of a central area update. But again, this is much about the software and the tool we have available to us, and we're just using the central area update as a demonstration. So here, the first tab, you have our overview of the center area. You know, it's it's our urban growth center. It's going to be planned to have some of the highest densities in population and employment. You're also seeing that the center area population growth rate is going from 30,000 in 2011 to 69,000 in 2041. As I'm running through this information, Julie is demonstrating how you can pop out different bits of information so that instead of looking at on the static map that you have in front of you, it gives it no justice in terms of looking at on a screen like this. The second tab is the employment hotspots. Here is another demonstration of how you can show that information. This is a heat density map, which shows where some of our highest employment concentrations are here in the downtown. You can see in the yellow as well as around the Brampton City Center, and you can see some employment densities down in the Orenda 410 area as well. Julie, what other bits of information can you tell us about this slide?
Yes, so heat maps are an excellent way of showing things if you need to show something with intensity or if you're showing concentrations of items. You can use a heat map. It's very visually stimulating. It's very easy to understand. Automatically, when you look at the heat map, you can tell that there's these two different areas here, with one that's starting in this Queen Street corridor area and the 410 Orenda area as well. So it's a great way to present data that not everybody needs to be an expert on the topic to be able to look at this slide and see that there's certainly some different densities happening in the central area. Also, you can see that there's a lot of text on the left-hand bar. This is not your typical PowerPoint presentation. Story maps are excellent for people when you don't have to have a presenter handy, so they can read, they can follow along, they can call out those pop-outs. They can look at the information, and it's really useful for telling a story for residents, businesses, developers to be able to look at this information themselves.
So we move on to the next tab, which shows us the 2016 new business listings for the center area for 2010 and 2016. Just give it a second as this slide loads up. It's a lot of information, so it just takes a second or two. Here in this instance, you're seeing the 2010 to 2016 businesses using the Spyglass tool. Julie, how does this help us?
Yes, so the Spyglass tool is an interesting application feature for Story Map where you can compare two different maps. So you could do that for time, you could do that for any geographical location if you're wanting to show a difference. So for instance, we have 2010 to 2016. You can use the Spyglass to see just 2016, and you'd be able to use this feature, like I said, for any two maps in the same geographical location. So that's a really neat way of presenting the data as well. It's very visually stimulating, it tells a story, it's interactive, and it gets people excited about what you're presenting.
The next tab, we're going to move on to the NACS, which are the North American Industry Classification Systems. It's the industry standard for classifying your different businesses. Here we've applied to the center area. On your right, all the dots show where exactly those businesses are. On the left, it shows some of the tables and data in a more detailed format.
Yeah, so an interesting feature with story maps is that you can zoom in as far as you'd like to zoom in. You can zoom back out. You can hover over certain areas. You could apply this to the whole city, looking at different wards, looking at different sections, and it's definitely visually stimulating. You could put as much or as little data on the map as you'd like, so that's a really great feature as well. It's also handy because you can pop out certain items. In a PowerPoint presentation, you're relying on your slides, but for the purpose of this, you can have a map which shows the data, but you can also show it in that chart format. So you can have both the statistics and the visual as well.
Now, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but not only can you put tables in there, but you can add a video stream if you wanted to. Correct?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. You can put videos, you can put pictures, you can put any sort of media in that left-hand bar.
Okay, moving on to the next tab. You can use this as a way of showing some of the, again, this is another tab showing the new businesses and employees within the center area. On your left-hand side, there's our four main sectors: health and life sciences, advanced manufacturing, innovation and technology, food and beverage, and on your right shows how many employees we have for each one of those businesses. In this area, there's this map shows a bit of a theme around your health and life sciences. You can see the light green identifies where some of those health and life science businesses are setting up shop, and you can see right around where Peel Memorial is. You can see where there's some businesses there, and that doesn't even show Peel Memorial, from what I understand, because Peel Memorial just opened up this year. So when you add that to it, you're going to get the makings of a bit of a cluster.
Yes, it's interesting because you can very easily see that cluster starting to form on that Queen Street corridor there. Again, you don't need to have somebody there presenting the information to you. That's just visually, you can see that. Also, these businesses are clickable. So you can click on them, you can get that public information, their name, their address, the phone number, the total number of employees, some of the other NAICS codes and industry data as well. So it's very usable for people, the public, residents, businesses, developers, to be able to use these story maps.
Next tab, we're using this as an example of how you can show some of the key developments that are happening in the area. We just picked 5 at random. These are Redwood property development at 45 Railroad Street. There's the Atlas Healthcare development at 241 Queen Street East. There's what else is there? You have the Mattamy one up there as well, I believe. No, Cumberland, sorry. There's the Cumberland development right in front of the hospital. Again, on your left-hand side, you can see the renderings, which sort of show off the project and some of the key statistics that surround it. And at the same time, you can easily identify where that project's taking place.
Yeah, again, it's just a nice visual way to present your data. It's very eye-catching. People don't tend to remember statistics, but they do remember visuals, right? So it's a great way to get residents excited about certain developments that are happening. It's a really visual way of presenting your data that's also interactive.
Now, all the software we're using now, our ability to do this is based on the investment that you guys have made in the past in our IT department in terms of going from a GeoMedia database to an Esri ARC system. And allowed our team in IT to develop this GeoHub where all this data is available. All this data is open data. You probably heard the term before that's accessible to the whole city. And this allows us to create themes, create stories, and more visually pleasing environment. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Holy cow. Very good. We do have Councillor Medeiros on the board. Councillor.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Is this consistent what's being used? Is this a part of a best practice other municipalities are using?
That's a very good point. I think there are some municipalities that are using it. They're moving more in this direction. And in order for us to be competitive from an economic development perspective and show that we are on this innovation curve that we talk about, these are the kind of things that we need to do.
And just in terms of, is there a cost to license for the software?
This didn't cost us anything. I mean, this is an investment that our IT guys made in our IT department, a year and a half ago, and this is how this department is starting to use that. And you're going to see other departments use it as well. I know our heritage planning has their storyboard map, which you've probably seen online, and they've used this software to do that. And you're going to start to see other departments and divisions use it as well.
Oh, so when you talk about investment, so this came from IT, they built this, and now this is accessible to all different departments if they want to use it.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Willens.
No questions, just thank you very much. That was excellent. I think it's a good, this looks very easy to use. And now, is this available, will this be available online eventually, or is this just internal?
Yeah, so we're going to be building story maps that are available to the public as well. So I think that we're going to be working in the future with strategic communications for those urban centers and all the different game changers. So that's going to be really exciting that we're going to be working with them, building some things that are available to the public.
Good, excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willens. Councillor Sprovieri?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the projected growth, the residential and employment along the corridor. Does this map or this indicate where the residential would be welcome and where the employment would be welcomed, or is that something that's also will be included in?
This particular information doesn't necessarily show that. I mean, the forecasts are citywide, and then you apply those down at the center area level. As you know, the urban growth center, we want to accommodate up to 200 jobs and persons per hectare over the entire center area. So if we see a lot of mixed-use developments, there'll be some standalone in residential, there'll be some standalone in employment as well. And that's the great thing about an urban center, an urban growth center that we have here, that we're trying to create an environment for both.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that, and actually this question is not related to this program, but how do we control whether we get too much residential or not enough employment? Do we have a program in place to control that we may end up with mostly residential and not enough employment along the corridor?
To be fair, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a question that goes beyond the scope of what we're trying to show here.
That's why I said
this
that.
is about this presentation is about the tool we have at our disposal.
That's why I asked the question whether there was plans to show where we want to attract the residential, where we want to attract the employment along the corridor. That's why I was leading to that question, but I know it's a different matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sprovieri. Mayor Jeffrey?
This is cool. I like cool. And I like all the tools that our staff have, because I think I can see that you're excited about it. And when staff are excited about it, that means they're engaged, and that's a good thing. And I think we were able to do a tour of the West Donlands the other day, and one of our staff was showing us kind of a virtual tool that they had as well. So those are all good things. 2 questions. How nimble is this particular tool, in that if we don't have Peel Memorial on there yet, or anticipated development, we want to put that on, primarily because there will be changes in the upcoming even 6 months, year, that nimbleness of the ability to add materials is really important for us to tell the best story. So how nimble is it?
That's a good question through you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's very nimble. I mean, we put this together and actually fairly quickly. We wanted to show you the tool that's available and how quickly we can do it. So when we do get new developments, or forecasting new developments, as long as we have that data, we can upload it and create the type of story that we want to create.
So if Peel isn't on there now, when will it be?
So through you, Mr. Chair. It is. So this was a snapshot of 2016.
Okay.
So I just took the data from 2016, but we actually update data all the time. Every single day we're updating. It's always updating. It's a constant thing. You can use this on an iPad. You could use this on your phone. There's apps called Esri Collector, where you can actually go out into the field and collect data, and it instantly goes into this program, this format. So it's great.
Cool. My other question is, in almost all the conversations I have with people who are interested in developing in Brampton, they want to know the transportation piece of it. So how will the GO station be part of this narrative? Is it part of this?
I think through you, Mr. Chairman, there is an ability to migrate that information. This is a flexible tool, so it all depends on the story that we want to create. Here, we just focused on some key elements that we had at our disposal. In terms of the transportation, I mean, we have our strategic plan, and I know part of that, one of those key pivots is related to the transit. We plan on using that, or I plan on suggesting anyways, to those leads to use this type of software for that.
I think we're out there selling the Super Innovation Corridor and the connectivity to the airport and all those other opportunities, as well as a special planning area around the Peel Hospital. So it needs to all be coordinated in that we're doing a lot of work that I want to make sure it gets somehow captured in here, and that innovation corridor is part of the narrative that we've been selling to the province and certainly with the federal government. So I want to make sure we don't miss it, because it's a game changer for us, because that connectivity is what helps demonstrate why this is a great place to invest. So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Cieo.
Yes, I just, through your chair, if I could, when we sat with council in February on repivoting the strat plan, we actually looked at this tool to show that map that council's been asking for a while. Like, what do we have in place today? What's anticipated? What's the future going to look like? So we're going to integrate, ECDEV took sort of a lead on this, but we're going to integrate it with all the departments to show you a comprehensive review, which includes transportation, which includes some of the other game changers. So that's what we're working on. We just wanted to show you a sample. So, but when Larry Beasley comes on board and our new commissioner, we really want to use this tool to show the community as well as you of what we're planning and what's it going to look like, and it can be very flexible. And to Councilor Medeiros' question, I thought that in my previous roles that I was using some leading edge stuff, but this is way better, so I'd rather be ahead and be the future benchmark of other cities. So it's really a good tool, and we're going to really leverage it now.
Thank you very much. Request the chair be heard. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. I just have a couple of questions and a comment. The ability to produce NACIS codes on here, can the NACIS codes be drilled down to like a 3-digit up to a 6, 7-digit on this, or is it just a straight, you'll get the NACIS code of what the main use of the land is?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we can take any of the data that's available to us and map it. Sometimes that requires to do some work on the back end. So anything is possible. It just is how much time it's going to take to do that sort of thing. So for the 4 sectors, that's a drilled down version of the North American industry classification system. Yep. So we have only taken the ones that apply to those sectors. So again, you can qualify it, you can drill it down, but it just is if the information is already available to us, or if we have to do some work on the back end to make it available.
Okay, thank you. And this is just a comment specifically to this map, actually. Is it possible just to change the colors to something brighter, because those of us who are color challenged only see one color on the map? Definitely. So just if you could take that with a grain of salt, if it was a brighter blue to a green or to a red, it'd make it easier to read. Thank you very much. And just a comment that for the ECDEV group, since Daniel and Tyson and Julie and Paul, you have been providing us with some unbelievable data that this council has been asking for a couple of years now. And it's anything we ask for, you guys seem to be able to come up with it, within minutes of us asking for it. It's there. So you're doing a tremendous job. Keep it up. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much. May I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Moore, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
There are no other reports. There's no new business. We have no correspondence. Councillor question period. Do any councillors have any questions at this time? Seeing none, I will turn the chair over to Councillor Willens.
Thank you very much. We're now at the Public Works and Engineering section. We have a 9.1 was pulled out of consent because we have a staff presentation, so maybe if we could have Gary Linton come forward.
Good morning, through the chair, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm just waiting for that to come up on the screen. Commissioner Patushka approached me last week and thought it would be wise to bring everyone back 3.5 years ago to a very, very brief, I promise, recollection as to what we were faced with on the evening of December 21st, the morning of December 22nd. This picture is indicative basically of what the city was faced with at that time on almost every street that had trees of that size. And although as you drive around now things look rather normal, we're still fighting this fight, and it carries on and will do so for at least a couple more years anyway. I appreciate the opportunity to bring these pictures. When I pulled these up on my computer, it brought back some horrific memories. If you're passionate about trees and what trees bring to the quality of life in a residential area, this was very disheartening to see. All of the trees that are pictured here had to be removed. And so basically a street that was 45 years old and had a mature cross-section of trees that overarched the street, full canopy. In less than 24 hours, they were all ruined. So just briefly, on those days when we first started, many of the members of council that were present at that term, we formed, through Elaine Norman, we formed an emergency operations center here at City Hall. We had tremendous support from all of our emergency services people. Everyone basically in the city rallied together. It was a very special time for us. It was heartbreaking what was going on, but it was encouraging to see everybody pull together. The tremendous support we received from private industry, public industries. We had cities of Windsor and Sudbury and several other municipalities come to help. Brampton, out of all of the municipalities within the ice storm that were affected by it, even our neighbors directly to the south received maybe 1% of what happened here. And it was just a microcosm of climate timing that made it so catastrophic. The first couple of days, our only job was not to cut trees down and make areas safe. It was actually to bring loaders and plows out to all of these streets and actually push the debris away so we could ensure that emergency vehicles were able to access all of our neighborhoods. So our public works people with the heavy equipment and contractors with heavy equipment, that's all they did is push things off the road. Everyone's driveway was still covered and blocked. All the roads were ice covered, and it was quite a horrendous situation. Following that, arborists from all over the country, even New York State, there was contractors here from New York State, we began the process of cleaning up, making people's driveways accessible, cleaning up the debris, removing liabilities. Obviously on this street, every tree is a liability. And once the ice melted off, I mean, they're all compromised and could fall on anyone at any given time. So staff were out, and we weren't even worried about removing trees at the time. We were going down streets and taking cut limbs off, or broken limbs off, to make sure that people weren't going to get hurt. So the first month of what we did was basically emergency services from a tree standpoint, is just to make things safe enough where people could walk down our streets without being in fear of dying because of a falling limb. It's just another photograph of what I believe this was in somewhere around Bartley Bow. There's hundreds, I have hundreds of pictures of this, but it's basically the same. And these are color photographs, by the way, if you want to know what the weather was like on that day. It was rather gray. So all the debris was cleaned up. About 3 weeks in, the province of Ontario had some officials come out here to assess the damage and provide us with some financial relief to deal with some of this. We were very eagerly collecting all the costs that were incurred so far. I think at the end of the day, at some point early in 2015 or late 2014, we did receive some compensation from the province I believe somewhere between 16 and 18 million dollars, which was a tremendous help and kept us going through those times. Oop, if I can go back. Just one more picture. This was on about 3 days in. This shows the brush piled up on people's front lawns prior to having it all removed. We had contractors come in. We had set up 6 different brush locations in the city where residents, city staff, contractors, everybody could bring their brush to dispose of it. And at that time, it was so widespread, we weren't asking homeowners to look after their own debris from their own private fallen trees. It was all brought to the road, and the city of Brampton looked after removing it all. And we brought it to these sites and had massive tub grinders come in and reduce it from brush and wood into mulch, which was hauled away in large part by the Region Appeal. Prior to the ice storm occurring, though, and not many would remember, but we did approach council in 2013 with the pending disaster. And this is one of those disasters that doesn't come as quickly as an ice storm, but we did a report on the emerald ash borer, and you all know about it and what its effects are. But we were getting ready to lose about 28,000 trees in the city of Brampton. Now, if there's a small glimmer of light in this whole situation, is that most of the trees that were damaged in the ice storm were ash. So those are trees we were going to lose anyway. So if there's a little ray of a glimmer of light and hope in this, and that would be it. This street is just a depiction of what emerald ash borer has done throughout the northeastern United States and in Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec. So this is a fully treed street. That's what it looks like when the emerald ash borer starts feeding on the trunks of those trees. And the ultimate is that's exactly the same street following the removals of the trees. And that's, you can imagine what those homeowners felt like when they drove home after all those things were removed. It's been a very trying time for the residents of Brampton, and from a tree standpoint, because these are in front of everyone's home. It's not like a park or a rec center or whatever. These trees affect everyone individually on all of these streets, and we've done our best to make sure every house has a tree. And it doesn't always happen, but we do our best to make sure that happens. So after the ice storm hit in 2014, in the fall, late fall 2014, we came to council with a recovery plan that we thought was reasonable and possible to complete. So this is a map showing the 5 worst hit areas in Brampton. And our commitment to you at that time was to make sure that our replacement programs would start in the middle of the worst hit areas, and we would radiate our replacement plantings out from the epicenters of where the damage was the worst. And to date, we've done that. The report that was submitted with your package today explains what's been done and what's intended to be done moving forward into 2017. This chart shows basically that we've removed around 25,000 street trees and park trees from the city of Brampton, and we're currently, or by the end of 2017, if the weather gets a little better, we'll be able to have about 15 to 16,000 trees replaced. And we're moving forward on schedule to what that initial 2014 report predicted, which we're very pleased about. And to finish, anytime I get the opportunity to approach anybody, you've got to understand that yourselves, senior staff, the residents of Brampton, everybody pitched in on this project, and they've been patient and wonderful, and the support's been awesome, and we couldn't have done it without you. Our people in finance and purchasing and planning have all jumped on board and assisted us when it's really above and beyond what their core duties are. Our fire and emergency measures people have been there from the start, and we're a tremendous support. The field staff that in December and January at that time, everybody who was able to was out clearing streets, helping residents, pulling brush, ensuring people had heat, food, and everything else. It was just a tremendous time. And before I leave, I'd just like to do a quick shout out to our forestry team, who after all of the publicity went away, they're still trucking away doing this. the administration and requirements to put in 6,000 trees a year and to remove 19,000 trees and have them stumped and deal with every homeowner that had a tree in front of their house has been a tremendous task, a difficult task. And with your support, we've managed to get this far, and it's looking like we'll be done 2 or 3 years in advance of our 10-year recovery plan that we tabled in 2014. So we're very pleased about that, and it's thanks to you and senior staff like Mr. Patushka, who I met very shortly after he arrived here. We were faced with the ice storm, so I think the first words were, "What did I get myself into?" So, but we had a tremendous working relationship, and so did all our staff with council and senior staff, and it was a tremendous time. So that's an update on where we are now, and I appreciate your time.
Don't go away, Gary. We've got a couple of questions here. Councilor Fatini.
Thank you, Gary. I know it's very hard for you when we get all the complaints and we're calling you. Everybody wants a tree installed. A couple of questions. I noticed there's a lot of areas where they already painted, like the T's, where they're on the curbs.
Yes.
But I don't see them on this. Are they painted now for next year or for this year?
Most of the T's that you're seeing on the curbs are for this year's trees. The T's indicate for our utility locators, so of those 19,000 trees that we planted, there's 6, 7, 8 utility locates have to be done for each location. So those T's help the utility locators show up. They know approximately where the tree is going to go, and they can locate the buried utilities for us.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of streets I've seen them. I don't see them on the list in Ward 8. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, there might be a street missing from the list, or maybe it was done. We're already moving ahead into 2018's planting season, so perhaps someone, but anybody who received a tree will have received a letter stating the approximate planting time. So if they are scheduled for later on, then the residents will have been made aware of that.
So we only did 33%. We still have lots to go.
We still have lots to go.
One more question, last question. You know, I see where in the older sections like Balmoral, the south of Queen Street, we got the lights. We're planting trees right close to the light poles, and I'm worried that when the tree grows, it makes the street very dark, and you know that's how we get break-ins and all. Like, so do we have to plant a tree on that boulevard, even though the resident wants it? Say, hey, there's a light pole there, we don't do it.
In most cases, we have arborist inspectors that go out and select tree varieties for tree locations. In most cases, those trees are ivory silk lilacs or ornamental pears or something that will remain small and or upright, and it won't impede the lights shining down on the road.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because I seen my area where I live, you know, it just smothers it every year. They have to trim it and trim it. It's very dark, very dark.
Well, I think it's given us a unique opportunity to actually modify the species of trees that we plant a little better. A lot of the damage that you saw on streets throughout Brampton was because they were planted all with the same variety of tree. We don't do that anymore. We haven't since 1995. But streets that were planted prior to that, especially if they were ash, they lost all their trees. So we're able now to select tree size that matches with a light or a hydrobox or root zone restrictions or what have you.
One more question, since you're an expert. The red maple, do we have a problem growing that this type of weather?
Are you speaking of the native red maple or the one with the dark red leaves?
The dark leaves. I had one planted, let's say, in front of my residence. It only lasted 3 years.
They're a problematic tree. They're actually a derivative of the Norway maple. So there's a Swedler maple, a Crimson King, which is the one you're talking about. And the Norway maple is the green form. They're all exactly the same tree. They're quite salt tolerant. They do suffer from a disease called verticillium wilt. It's a soil-borne disease, and it does tend to take off a good number of the population. And we're moving away from them because they're not a native tree. So there is some problems with them, to answer your question.
Last question. Like if you go out in Ward 8 in certain areas where the boulevard is like only 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide, and we're planting trees, when they throw salt and the salt truck throws the salt, I notice they die because of the salt. gets on there.
That is true, and I've been fighting with our friends who look after the roads for years, but they still put salt. We've tried to back them up. I won't go down that road. We try and back them up where possible, where the property lines allow us, and our cross-section of our streets and through our planning department, most trees now are placed, the sidewalks actually moved a little closer to the road. The trees are backed up onto the front lawn, still on city property.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So where we can, we do that, but a lot of people, especially if you're replacing an existing tree that was there, they're adamant that the tree go back in its current location, and we're adamant that we try and reestablish our canopy cover in Brampton. So we do work hard to keep them going, and on a lot of residential streets, the salt applications are reduced, and it's a salt sand mixture. And typically, if the lawn is watered, most of those trees will survive reasonably well.
Do we have a hard time planting on the lawn? Because, where the water may shut off valve, that's a property line. If we put it
In most cases, yes.
Because the boulevards there, the grass is only like 2 feet some areas.
In some areas, and in most of those areas, we try and back them up onto the lawn, because typically with a normal city cross-section, we have a couple of meters available to us behind the sidewalk. And if there's room between the gas, the hydro, the bell, fiber optics, and everything else, we'll definitely put them back farther away from the road surface.
So we should blame Joe for throwing lots of salt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fatini. Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff have done a tremendous job on the ground cleaning up after this mess, and I don't want you to take my comments as a negative, but probably not your problem. Haven't done a very good job identifying the wards, because just on a cursory glance, Councilor Warren, I just found 7, probably a lot more than that, in Ward 1 that aren't even Ward 1. So a lot of them are Ward 2, and I'm thinking maybe that Willens and Paleschi are trying to sneak some things in here or something. Maybe IT can help out, because somewhere in the computer system, they're not identifying the wards, right?
Okay, and the computers are generating the ward numbers, so
Yeah,
we'll look at where the problem is and try and correct it.
It's a little
and I
minor thing,
apologize.
because who cares what ward it's in? We really got to get the job done. And I'm assuming we're getting a job done by the need first, so it really doesn't matter what wards they're in. But since this is a public document, somebody might see it and say, hey, I'm not there, that's not right. Also, there's a couple on here that are on twice. So that screws your numbers up a bit too. If you look, just a cursory one, Valley Creek is on the list in Ward 8 twice, with different numbers and how many trees you're doing on that street, so I'm not sure how that works.
Through the chair, if you'd allow me, I would like to take that addendum back, and I'll make sure it's correct, and I'll resubmit it, if that's okay.
That's fine. I mean, it's not your problem, obviously. This is more of a computer or IT type of thing, I think. Not that I'm blaming IT. But, like I said from the beginning, on the ground, boy, you guys did a tremendous job cleaning up after this mess. And I know we get a lot of comments from the public who recognize, they want to know when their tree is going to be replaced, but they acknowledge that the cleanup was fantastic. Like, it happened so quickly. This is a pretty devastating thing, and I'm really glad today you started off by bringing us back to what had happened. That's a good reminder of what had gone on and how quickly it was cleaned up. And the hard part really now is, the long part, not the hard part, is replacing the trees. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moore.
Thank you. It's too bad it wasn't a video. I can recall standing out on my front porch and just hearing the noise. All you could hear were the branches breaking off the trees and the ice. It was really, when you look at the pictures, it's hard to believe it even happened. Mm-hmm. It was just so overwhelming. The only question I have is, before the ice storm, we had a list of trees on various assorted streets right across the city that needed to be replaced. Have we merged those two lists so that if there was a street or a house that was on the list for a couple of years or 5 years for a tree replacement,
that was merged with this list so that you're not making 2 trips back to one street. So you're
Yes,
doing
we-
a landscaping plan for the whole street.
Yes, through the chair. We did merge our replacement list that happened prior to the ice storm, and we also have maintained over the last 3 years what we call in the office a one-off list. So everything has to be replanted, but this is a special circumstance for whatever reason, and we'll make sure to get around and do that. And if there's 3 or 4 trees on the street that need to be replaced, we'll do those as well.
Okay, so we have one list now.
We have
We're not
one
working
list
off of-
moving forward.
Of several. Terrific.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilor Spilberry.
Chairman, thanks, Gary, for the update. It's certainly looking, things are looking a lot better as the trees are being planted around the city. I have a couple of questions. Have you has the plantings been done in-house, or have they been also contracted out to contractors to plant?
We don't have the staff in-house to even approach doing this alone. We have actually 2 contractors working for us right now replacing trees.
Okay, and so is the reason for only 2 is because there's a problem with getting more, or is it because of funding? Why couldn't we accelerate? I know that you said you're 3 years ahead. You're 3 years ahead of time as predicted, but could it be sped up in any way to get them done?
It is possible. We maximize the funding we receive through the capital programs for dealing with this event. There is an administrative problem as far as we're quite taxed to put 6,000 trees in the ground in the season, where we were basically set up to do 700 or 800 replacements from natural mortality in the field. The other overarching issue with that is tree supplies in Ontario are greatly reduced from what they were 5 years ago. For a couple of reasons, the ice storm being one, there's been a tremendous demand, and the other being the weakness in the Canadian dollar. Many of the trees that are supplied by our local wholesale growers are going south of the border right now. So we're now we're having to accept a little bit smaller sizes, what have you, to keep up with the rate of planting that we'd like to maintain.
Yeah, I noticed the small, on Fenton Way, I just drove by just the other day, and I saw the small size, smaller than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the other question I had is, and actually Councilor Martini mentioned there's a lot of trees on Boulevard between the sidewalk and the curb that especially in some of the new areas, are not doing very well, and a lot of them have died. Especially on Sandalwood, I noticed that most of them have died, and also on McVean Drive, most of them have died. That were planted there by, I guess, when the road was built and so on. Are there plans to reevaluate as to whether it's a good idea to plant trees in a small boulevard section that's very close to the road, and the soil is very poor, and it's it's access to salt splashing, and that's probably causing the problem.
We have, through our planning department, we reevaluate with every subdivision what the cross-section looks like, and we try and keep the trees, we try and provide a tree with a space big enough to survive as far away from the curb as possible. On major roadways, we are reevaluating how we plant trees, and if we should at all plant trees between the sidewalk and the curb, because with increased speed and numbers of vehicles and the increased salt that goes down to keep those roads safe, those trees are forced to try and survive in a very harsh environment. What we would like to do in places like Sandalwood or North Park Drive or other major boulevards is to, instead of doing soldier courses of trees along the road, is to leave spots and behind the sidewalk do something a little more impactful that may involve 7, 8 trees in a grouping. So as you're driving down the road, visually you see trees, they're just not planted in a soldier course along the road. They have a better chance of survival, and if we pick and choose their spots, the overall end product will be much better, in my view.
That's good. And obviously, you're happy about the wider boulevards and the new subdivisions where now you get about 9 feet, I think, or so, 3 meters, where the tree can really do well.
The more the better.
Yeah.
The more the better. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini, this is your fifth question.
Thank you. Well, when the contractors plant the trees, do they have to give a certain warranty?
Yes. Those trees are warranted for 2 years.
2 years. So last year, we got people calling for trees, and then they call in that they died. And they go by, and they kind of ticked off what the resident can't pick up a pail of water and put the water on the tree. Does the contractor be responsible for that? Lose money because it was a dry season and it was hot last year?
Through the chair, the contractor is responsible to water and maintain the trees. Prior to planting, we encourage all residents through a hand-delivered letter to every home that receives a tree. We instruct them what to do as far as watering and the frequency of water required. It's not a very difficult thing to keep a tree going. Last year with the heat and drought, it was very hard, especially for some of our native varieties that we put in. So we're doing what we can, but at the end, the contractor is on the hook for those trees if they weren't maintained through the first year.
So you talked about funding. Did we receive all the funding from the province and federal, or did we?
My understanding is there is no more funding forthcoming. They didn't fund all of the expenses that were incurred by us, but they did establish a process and a series of items that they would cover, and we provided them with that information, and that's what resulted in the money being provided to us from the province. I believe that came in late 2015.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Mayor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question. I want to thank Gary and Rob and all your staff. We're lucky to have such professional staff who know their business and I think helped us manage a very difficult issue, so thank you. We lost every tree, I think, except one on the court I live on. And the good news is this year my tree finally blossomed. So that's a good sign that it's healthy and it's going to survive. And it was a big job for us across the city, but thank you. Thank you to your staff. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, just one more question or comment. First off, I would like to thank you and your staff for the customer service that you have given to the residents, because I know people contact us in regards to tree planting, and those who have strong opinions, we always refer over to you to deal with. And I certainly appreciate the time and attention that you've given to the residents in the community over this whole period. And we do have one sort of holding on there in regards to tree planting on North Park Drive, so at least we'll be able to give them a response. But the other thing I want to bring up, because we're talking about trees and planting, is that, and I know Mr. Gasper knows how I feel about this, but the designs that we have adopted for new subdivisions with shrubs along the roadways have become a horror story, I think, across the municipality, because if they're not maintained on a regular basis, they grow wild. The beds attract litter and everything else that's blowing, and I think it's time we stopped and took a look at our landscape designs for major roadways, especially in new subdivisions, because it's not even just the cost to maintain, it's the fact that within a couple of years, they're really unsightly. And if you drive along a boulevard that has grass and trees, it's nice. It's clean. You're able to cut the grass. You're able to address the garbage and litter. but areas where we've planted these shrubs, I know in Ward 8, I went out last year with Mr. Gasper just to, point out some of the areas, and the resolution was to get rid of the shrubs, plant sod and trees. So we really have to, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Schlang, Harry, we really have to look at our landscape plans of subdivision and the things that we are requiring the developers to do, because at the end of the day, it's leaving a real mess for the city to have to deal with, but these are the requirements that we're making. So we have to take a look at that and the impact on the neighborhoods. The older areas of the wards that didn't have so many shrubs, but have the older areas of the city that didn't have shrub beds, but had tree plantings, are far more attractive than the new communities that have the wide boulevards and they're lined with shrub beds that are full of weeds, that are growing all over the place, and collect litter around the city. So it's really it's a sore spot for me, and I think that we got to go back to the beginning and look at our landscape designs and what we're requiring in new areas. It's more trees, less shrubs, but I think at the end of the day you end up with a healthier, more attractive community. So thank you, and thank you for the great work you do all the time and your responsiveness.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. You stretched outside the report a little bit, but I think Joe Patushka wants to respond to you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miles. Well, that's exactly what we're doing. In the past, some of the designs on the major roads really didn't take into account the sustainability of it. So we're working with our urban designers because we want placemaking for people. We want it to be nice, so we're working with our urban design, and now we're working together with the horticulture people so that the two are actually talking to each other, so the stuff that we plant is actually sustainable. So moving forward, that's happening, and as you pointed out, we are correcting some of the mistakes of the past.
Well, I applaud you for that. I think that's the key to it, that the designers need to talk to the operations staff when they're making them part of the site plan approval process. So you have to know how we're going to maintain them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the report. Could I we just want to receive the report. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, Gary. Our next report is from Lauren Farrell, Senior Manager of Environment, Public Works and Engineering, dated April 6, 2017. Request to begin procurement, purchasing bylaw, section 4.0, stormwater management, pond and maintenance. Is there a recommendation? Are there any questions? Councillor Gibson, do you move the... Sure. All in favor of the recommendations? That carried. Thank you. The minutes of Brampton Safety School Council are in consent. There are no correspondence. Any council questions, period? Any questions from council regarding this Public Works? Seeing none, I will pass the chair now over to Councillor Miles, Chair Miles, for corporate service section. Does anybody want a break, or everybody okay? Keep going? Okay. Sure.
Okay, moving on to corporate services. If I can find it, there it is. So our first item on corporate services is we do have a presentation under government relations, but I think we'll go in the order of the agenda. So the first report is on a respectful workplace policy. Is there any comments or questions from members of council in regards to that? It's quite a lengthy document, but speaks for itself. Okay, no comments then. Could I have a motion to move forward the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Willens. All in favor? That's carried. The next item is minutes of the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee of April 4th. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the chair of the Taxi Advisory Committee, there was a motion submitted in the committee, which was passed. So just to back up a little, there was a presentation by James Bisson, manager of licensing and enforcement. The presentation was your ride, your input, a review of the public survey which has taken place. And so James had given an update on the results. A committee discussion took place with the results, with respect to the results of the survey. And there were a number of questions that the committee members had in regards to the survey results. Number one, they wanted to know the number of survey respondents, if the number of survey respondents is an appropriate representation of the Brampton population. That if staff can verify that the survey respondents are Brampton residents, and if a respondent could complete more than one survey, and if the survey results were verified by a third party. So essentially, they felt that the survey was not necessarily a scientific survey done. They felt that it didn't, they were questioning whether it represented what Bramptonians really feel. They also felt that there was a potential for the survey to be quote-unquote rigged by anybody who wants to maybe even vote more, fill out the survey more than once, or if there was any particular parties that could have some type of mini campaign and have people just flood the survey. So questions, they had questions and concerns regarding some of the survey questions and responses as well. They asked for clarification from staff that the survey, if the survey results represent the opinions of the respondents, and they also had a request that a second public survey be conducted by an external agency to replace the current survey. So they submitted a motion, a recommendation, and I'm going to read out the amended motion right now. So it's on 7.3.1-3. So TC 028-2017, it's basically what we're doing is removing the portion that says it is the position of the Taxi Advisory Committee. So I'll read it out fully. Whereas the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee has expressed concerns regarding the results of the current public survey and would like a more thorough survey to be conducted, therefore it be resolved that staff conduct a more thorough survey to replace the current public survey, which is more Brampton specific, respondents to include address, telephone numbers, etc., and that the survey be conducted by an external source and or verified by a third party, for example KPMG, and that the questions of the survey be identical for taxi cabs, limousines, and ride-sharing companies, and that staff provide information to the best of their ability that the respondents of the original survey, A, did not complete the survey more than once, and B, were residents of the city of Brampton.
Okay. Members of council speaking to the motion that I'm assuming is being pulled out by Councillor Dillon, to be addressed by council. Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering if we can hear from staff whether they think this is necessary and what the cost has been so far and what it will be if we do another survey. Thank you.
Through the chair,
First and foremost, I want to thank both the chair and vice chairs, Councillor Dillon and Councillor Fortini, for their respective leadership with the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee. They've put a great amount of effort in to support staff's work. There is a holistic approach. We are considering one line of evidence to that was this survey. There are other multitudes of information we are collecting that would be brought forward back to the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee for their consideration as part of that coordinated approach. In terms of responding to the question and the motion, there are some concerns or clarifications we would require, being respectful of the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee and the direction from Council. When we look at the first part where it says that we would like a more thorough survey to be conducted, we would need some direction and clarity, and whether or not Council would prefer to do that, or we send this back to TAC later on this month to have a more fulsome discussion as well as provide the more detailed responses. I think it may provide clarity to us, given that over 2,900 responses were received through that process, which was the highest ever achieved by the city. And in terms of thoroughness, it was approximately already 20 questions, some of which had multiple parts. So again, we would seek your advice on what thorough survey means. And there are some concerns with respect to both INFIPA and privacy legislation that prevents us or inhibits us from collecting information related to both addresses, telephone numbers, or even emails. They can be optional questions where we ask them to provide that information, but that doesn't necessarily mean we will get it. And in terms of we can support a third party doing it. The cost for an external third party, depending on the scope of the survey, could range anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. And in terms of timelines, it would need 8 to 10 weeks in terms of developing that RFP and the scope and qualifications we'd be looking for, then putting it out to market or going out looking for requests, assessing those, and then awarding it. Then the time to redo or reestablish what that draft questionnaire would look like, implementing it. Those kind of timelines means it would be coming fall, and then a report back to committee and council November, December of this year.
So what is the cost been so far?
The costs.
Sorry, my mic went off.
Sorry. Given that currently, which is quite common, leveraging the skills and abilities of strategic communications, which many municipalities do, much of the work with respect to design and implementation, generating the survey, as well as looking at the analysis, was handled by staff internally. So there was no further cost beyond staff hours.
There's a cost to staff hours, though. So another 20 to 40 on top of what's already been spent. Is the staff's opinion that, well, obviously it would be, I guess I don't want words in your mouth, but if staff did the survey and present the survey to them, then I guess the staff's opinion that it was sufficient. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is the position of staff. However, there were some questions raised that, again, we would like to go back to the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee and have a more fulsome discussion to be able to respond explicitly to their questions, and then develop a clear direction forward on how we can move and support the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee. But yes, in general, staff believe the survey was done, followed due diligence, followed scientific research standards. The margin of error based on 2,900 survey responses is approximately 2%. The scientific research standard is 5%. And the typical sample you would require for a city of the size of Brampton for that scientific research standard of plus or minus 5% margin of error and 19 times out of 20 is approximately 384.
Okay. I guess then, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask for a referral of this back to staff to work with the Taxi Cab Advisory. It's obviously even if we pass this today, staff don't have the information they need to provide a good survey anyway, so they'd have to work with it. So I'd like to ask for referral this back to the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Well, thank you. I'll support a referral back. I think this is worthy of more discussion at the committee. I guess as a member of this committee here that deals with the minutes and the recommendations that come from that committee, what I'm not clear on is, and maybe when it comes back to council after, and hopefully a referral passes, you could address what prompted the survey. What kind of information were you hoping to attain from that? And how is it going to be used to inform how staff did their work and how we supported the taxi industry? So what were they hoping to get out of this? Obviously, the results didn't produce what those sitting around the TAC committee thought it would. And so I think the natural go-to place is to question the process. But if staff feel comfortable that the process was had integrity, then it really means that the committee just need an opportunity to better understand how it was going to be used. It's one thing to get results and you don't like them, but how is it going to affect them moving forward? And that's not clear from the minutes that we have here. So, did you want to speak? Sorry.
Through the chair, Councillor Moore, that's an excellent point. Hence, the desire I had following that Taxi Cab Advisory Committee is to actually have that type of fulsome discussion to ensure that there was clarity on the approach and the process and answer those questions, as well as paint a much clearer picture with all the stakeholders and committee as to how this survey, which is one component into the evaluation, into the approach, how that fits in, all the other lines of evidence, and what they're going to be used for and how they synergize together. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that perspective, because that's the intent.
As a former chair of this committee, it is one of the most demanding committees. It is a highly emotional group because you're dealing with their livelihood, and that, particularly of late with ride-share programs that are out there, they're feeling particularly threatened. And so I think, while it is an emotional committee, I know I've had them sitting around my dining room table in the past. So I think having a roll up your sleeves and really understand the fuller picture, and you talked about this being one component, there are other sources of information, but really at the end of the day, how is it going to affect their relationship with the city and how they protect their livelihood? So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sprovieri?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to staff. Can you tell us a little bit what the purpose of the survey was about?
So we're speaking to the referral. Sir, you can structure your question in a way that you're speaking to the referral.
Well, I needed to know more information about what the survey was about, what the results of the survey were, and what the purpose of the survey was, and the results of the survey. I need to have these information before I can agree to spend additional taxpayers' funds to do an additional survey, Madam Chair. So I would support the referral in order to get that information so staff can report back. And then and we'd like to understand what the purpose of the survey was and how does it affect the industry. And if we went to another survey and it came back differently, what difference would it make? So I think we need to have all those information before we agree to have conduct another survey that may end up being with the same information or the same results, and just having to spend extra money. So I support the referral to get this information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon?
Thank you. Just for the benefit of the TAC members, I was hoping that if the referral passes, staff could come back, and I think Councillor Sprovery touched on it, that staff could essentially differentiate and I guess contrast and compare what the differences are between the survey that the city had done and what the TAC advisory committee members are requesting. So basically, I guess the pros and cons even, I guess you could say, contrast and compare. And just again, speaking on behalf of what the members had said, they felt that this survey in particular was not a true reflection of what the residents might be feeling, and they I guess they challenged the criteria, the questions, and the process used. So, just speaking for what they had said, I guess that's what they were looking for in terms of this new survey that they wanted. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a referral of the item before the chair. Okay, recorded vote using buttons on that. So the question is, will we refer this matter back to staff to provide additional information? Sorry, yeah, that's what the question is are we referring it back to staff for more information to council and then to the committee, or referring it back for more or for staff to get more information from the committee? So Councillor Dillon, sorry, Councillor Gibson, it's his referral, so could you clarify?
It was to back to the committee for staff to work with the committee.
Okay. All in favor of that? A question to the referral? Okay.
Yes, sorry. With the referral, we'll go back to the TAC, the committee, for I guess have a more clarification from the committee members as to what they're really asking for. Is that correct, or a more I guess substantive information from them?
Through the chair to Councillor Dillon, I would envision sitting down with you as chair to work through some of that in preparation for that meeting. But number one, I would like to look at this motion, given some of their concerns from the last discussions that took place, and to provide some feedback and some of the answers to those questions and concerns that they had, and then based on your current comments with respect to differentiating and comparing some of those pros and cons to looking at what we have, what could potentially be possible. And my hope is that by working collaboratively with the members of that committee and some of the stakeholders, that we can come to an approach that allows clarity on how we're going to move forward. And it may be that the decision at that committee would not be to reduce, or maybe it is. But I want to provide all the information possible to that committee so that they have further clarity prior to making that decision.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, recorded vote on the referral. Members of committee, you can press your button.
Madam Chair, the referral motion carries unanimously 10-0 with one absent.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, we will move on then to, there's no items of correspondence. Councillors' question period. Are there any questions from members of council? No. Mayor Jeffrey?
So I just wanted to speak to the email that I sent out to council last night about Rogers Television and some of their restructuring that's going on. And I believe that through this committee question period, we can ask staff to come back with a report on the impact and what next steps we as a council should do based on the fact that Rogers will not be taping after August 31st, our meetings, and to get some information about the archival footage that I believe now we will have to house. So, and in the interim, I'm guessing there will be some information we might want to share with the Region of Peel, because they'll be in the same position as will Peel Regional Police also uses Rogers to televise their meetings. So I think we're all kind of in the same boat, but it would be useful to have a report come back.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, staff are assessing the news that was released yesterday, and there's an interdepartmental team working on this, and we plan to report back before the summer break.
And obviously, we're disappointed and saddened at the decision, but we know Rogers is a large employer in Brampton, and certainly we'll find a way to make this work in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sprovieri.
Madam Chair, on that issue, I read the information that was provided, also the letter from the Roger fellows, and he indicated that somehow, and I don't understand how, that the council meetings would still be available to the public in some manner. Can we get a clarification from staff if they're aware of how they would be, how we could get how the public would have access to the council meeting done in some manner?
Mr. Fay, can you respond?
Through you, Madam Chair. So on the Rogers cable TV site for Brampton now, they have an archive going back to 2012 for council meetings only, and we will be working with them to assess how we could obtain that archive. We do have copies of DVDs of all council meetings dating back, I believe, even before that time. So we'll be working with them to how we can move forward to continue to make that information available to the public. So that's our objective.
So this is only the archives that we're talking about, or are we talking about future council meetings that will not be televised on Rogers?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't speak for televising, but our staff-initiated plan will be to find a way to continue to provide public access through the computer access through video streams to council and presumably committee meetings moving forward. That's our long-term goal, to ensure that there's no disruption of service.
So in other words, people would be able to access through the internet if they were interested in viewing the council meetings or committee meetings. They go to a website that the city would probably establish. Is that what we're looking at?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's the solution we're looking at, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dillon.
I have a question, actually. Maybe it's I just looked this up, actually. Maybe it's for your information in terms of the survey. So there's a New York Times article, and it says, in some places, Uber employees were also told to create computer programs known as scripts that would automatically vote for the ride-hailing service in city administrative surveys. Such tactics were effective, and it goes on. So it's just an FYI for you, Joe. And these are some of the concerns that the drivers had, that if there's a potential for the survey to be, I guess, influenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasn't really a question, but
So
we'll
do you
move
understand
on.
the question or the comments?
So-
The Russians are involved in this.
Next is the referred matters list. It's on the website. So now we're to government relations matters, and Lowell Rubin Vaughn is here to do a presentation on the provincial budget.
Thank you very much, for you, Madam Chair, to Council. It's really here for your reference. 130-plus page document, and try to whittle it down into something that's a little bit more manageable, I think, for Council as well as staff, as we really build a roadmap to building relationships with the provincial government. One of the lens that I wanted to try to do this first attempt through is actually through the game changers, and really touch on what are the highlights from the provincial budget, but also other recent announcements over the last couple of weeks that really start to tie all the discussions that we're having as staff as well as council together from that provincial budget perspective. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. In terms of a little bit of a backstory, when I first started, one of the first things that we did do was actually we pulled together a City of Brampton pre-budget submission focused on 4 key areas, and lo and behold, they align very nicely with a number of our game changers. Post-secondary education, focusing on the innovation side, green infrastructure, which is around the Etobicoke Creek revitalization project, so Riverwalk. Public transit, this follows up to the discussions at AMO around working with Metrolinx and MTO to get them engaged with our mobility hubs discussion. And the last point was around transportation infrastructure. We really focused, along with our regional partners, on the GTA West Corridor, and our ask for this one was really around finalizing that EA assessment. Earlier this year, the mayor, along with the CAO, did present to the Provincial Standing Committee on Economic and Finance Affairs, as well as we did participate on the Minister Sousa's roundtable discussion in Mississauga. So as you kind of note, and as is kind of woven throughout the presentation or the document before you, they just really try to weave into where are all the touch points along the 6 game changers. I think we know that the provincial budget is going to be balanced this year, and they're also projecting it over the next 2 years. There's a few other points in there that I raised, but again, I'm not going to discuss unless there are specific questions. On the future transit connections, I think as staff and as council we need to be aware of that they've actually expanded the funding available by $30 billion. So from $160 billion, which was presented in our budget earlier this year, has now been expanded to $190 billion. A large focus of that will be about $84 billion split up with the public transit, as well as $26 billion in highway infrastructure. So a good opportunity for us as we start to continue to plan to start touching some of these dollars that are available out there. I also touch on a couple of the initiatives that were specifically addressed within the budget and as they relate to the City of Brampton. Earlier this year, I touched on the doubling of the gas tax, so I just included the chart that was previously presented to Council in terms of what impact that will have for the City of Brampton. One of the things that I think a lot of municipalities were hoping to see within this budget is when the federal budget was announced earlier, I think in February, they talked about the public transit infrastructure fund, so the second phase. So the federal government is going to be putting up 40%. So I think for municipalities, we were looking to see what the federal or what the provincial portion of that is going to be. So there is a section on province and federal relationships. There's one page dedicated to all these funding streams, but nowhere in that budget document does it commit provincial dollars or percentage to PTIF2. On the health partnerships, there's a lot of discussion, especially from around economic development, investments in healthcare and hospitals, long-term care facilities. I suspect that the Region Appeal next week will also have an analysis for the on the provincial budget. So I think that they're going to cover a lot of the health services and human services, social services as well. So one of my last points in this presentation really talks about the city and the region really starting to collaborate and have those discussions about where we're aligned, because the city can't go at it alone. So I think it's important to start to improve those relationships as well. You heard a lot about the OHIP Plus, the Children and Youth Pharmacare Plan, and this is quite interesting because it is going to be providing full coverage to youth 24 below. And again, as we have a young population, I think this could be potentially good news for our residents. And today, the federal government released the second part of their census data. So again, we'll have updated information that we could build into the story. On the university side, there is something that's specifically related to university, especially around the experiential learning. $190 million over 3 years for a career kickstart strategy, and this includes providing those linkages to trying to bridge education and the private sectors together. If you look throughout the budget, and if you also align this with the federal government, there's a lot of nice similarities between what are the key sectors that the province are investing in and also the key clusters from an economic development perspective. So I think that we can hit on a lot of these as well, especially from IT, advanced manufacturing, health and life science. I put together, try to keep this a little bit short, so the future ready and urban planning, planning vision, as well as the urban center. If you recall, last week on the Government Relations Matters, the province had announced making housing more affordable plans. So as we talk about, as we go through our planning exercises, the need for more affordable housing, including rental. So the City of Brampton is working with our colleagues at the region to ensure that we're part of any discussions as it relates to any of the measures that were originally announced by the province about 2 weeks ago. The government also announced the basic income pilot. I know that this is something that the Region Appeal was quite interested in this as well, so I think that they're going to be keeping a close eye on this and what impacts and some of the best practices that they found from Hamilton, Thunder Bay, as well as Lindsay. On the senior side, they are going to be investing in the Elderly Person Center. So again, as we think of it from a city as a whole, I think there's some good opportunities for us to try to leverage. Interesting, if you go back probably about 2-3 budgets ago, climate change was the key buzzwords. I did a little bit of search. So there's actually, climate change was announced probably about 3-4 times in this budget, so you can tell that they're starting to pivot a little bit themselves. But I do want to just highlight that there is some news related to Riverwalk, in particular around the funding that we're still awaiting approval for through the Clean Water and Wastewater Funds. And part of that money will be used towards a feasibility study that will lead towards the full environmental assessment in about 2 years. So that's the provincial budget from a little bit of a City of Brampton perspective. Staff is still trying to take a step back and digest this a little bit more, so we'll look forward to having some more reports or more updates as they become available. And like I said previously, we're really going to try to align some of our work with the Region Appeal just to see where we can really work together, especially on the human services, health partnerships, and so on. So with that, I'll leave it at that and happy to try to answer any questions.
That was really fast. A lot of information. So I think we have some questions. Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, sorry. Thank you for the presentation. The question I have, the 190 billion, is that a provincial commitment or is that a combined federal provincial commitment?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor, that is the provincial portion as it relates to transit and transportation infrastructure. So if you recall, there was a slide in the city budget that broke down. I think it was 160 billion at the time provincial, and I think it was 140 billion dollars that was broken up around 4 different pots federally as well.
I see. And now once these funds are committed by the government, can they be sort of deleted by an incoming government, if they, or is that or at the end, once it's committed, it's committed?
I think once it's committed, but again, it's up to a new government to make decisions. If we take the new federal government, they reallocated a lot of the funding that was allocated through the previous government, and then they just kind of build it into their own infrastructure plan. So,
I see. Okay. So we have, as long as it keeps going, then we have a very good chance of getting the funding for the LRT once we're ready to go. Once it's decided by council the route, so that these funds are available basically for us to tap into. Basically, is that correct?
There's opportunities for us to explore. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. And I know that you're going to be drilling down farther to find out what does it actually mean in terms of dollars and cents for the City of Brampton. I guess in particular, for me, on the benefit plan, how does it affect our premiums if all of our kids are taken as it relates to the pension plan, or the benefit plan and the prescription drug piece?
So through you, Chair, to the Councillor, it's a great question. That's something that we've already started having a conversation on. So we're going to take this back and really start to flesh out what does this actually mean from a corporation perspective. So.
Yeah, well, I can only imagine that the benefit companies are, and even the pharmaceutical companies are having a bit of a heyday with this as well. So, okay, I think our residents deserve a better opportunity to. What does the provincial budget really mean for them? I think as a regional councillor, we know that there's regional programs where there's probably a greater impact for us than here locally, but we do have the game changers that we need. If we're going to identify those as opportunities to partner with our federal and provincial counterparts, then let's be able to demonstrate that they're working with us to get things done for Brampton. Thank you.
Thank you. In a number of slides, it keeps saying future ready, and I asked a question before. Just trying to get a grasp on what future ready means. Have we defined it yet?
Through you, Chair. Again, it's a common purpose amongst our staff to rally around building a better future for Brampton. We were defined it. I showed you a couple slides where we define it more internally, and where we have sort of thinking about it externally, but we haven't fully defined it. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking within the staff to build for the future. But stay tuned. We continue to work on it.
So, because I've had a few questions actually about future ready, so do I just tell them that it's a mindset?
Through you, Chair. Well, we have published some things, but we just changed the strat plan. We just pivoted the strat plan. We want to start to show you through action, not so much talk, that we're changing things.
And that's fair, but the reason why I ask it is a lot of people want to know if there's a definitive plan. Like we've mentioned Surrey and their motto, etc. The future lives here, and all that. And there's I guess they might have a plan behind it. So I'm just, for the people who are asking me, I'd like to give them a clear kind of definition. We have a plan going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. Regarding the slide on housing, so I do see identified mechanisms which are at at the municipal level. So I'm wondering, and this is not I don't need an answer now, but are we going to be developing some form of housing strategy moving forth where, because there has to be some alignment with the region, obviously. I know Mississauga, they rolled out their housing plan, but my understanding there isn't that strong alignment that that could be, and they're working on that. So I'm just wondering, from the City of Brampton's perspective, is this something that we're thinking about developing some form of housing strategy? Is this on our radar? Just because of mechanisms here identified are within our mandate, within our competence. So is this something worthy to look at?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, it's a good question. We'll take that back. I believe that there's something but we just want to make sure that before we present you with an answer that we have our facts. But it's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yeah, I think Councillor Medeiros has raised a really good point. At the region last week, there was an outline of Mississauga's plan for the future, and it was really spearheaded towards middle-class families. However, the region's plans really are focused on affordable housing for lower income families. But the impact of the Mississauga plan is going to be felt region-wide, because it was very apparent in their plan that in order for it to be successful, it would need regional support and regional dollars. So I think the City of Brampton, it's really important that we take a look at what that request is at the region of Peel. But I think more importantly now that we see in the provincial government's plan in regards to affordable housing, things that they have not considered before, like making provincial land available and working with municipalities to build more affordable housing, development charge rebates. There's a lot of firsts here that I think we need to be future ready for. So, and I guess when Councillor Dillon asked a question about future ready, at our last few workshops we've talked about a strategic plan that is a vision for the future of the municipality. We now have a financial master plan, which is a plan for the financial sustainability of the municipality, making us future ready. We have a Parks and Recreation master plan that is just about finalized, which will make us future ready for parks and recreation and leisure activities. I think if you get the question, Councillor Dillon, from your residents, you can refer them online to strategic plan, financial master plan, parks and recreation master plan, transportation master plan, I think is being updated. So, and then we also have our health sector plan. So there's a lot of planning that's been done so that the municipality can be responsive to change, but also to potential dollars. I mean, these announcements, both provincially and federally, where they're unfolding dollars available to the municipalities. If we're not future ready and can't respond, we will lose out. So I think that's key and imperative. So I'm so happy, Lowell, that you have joined the City of Brampton and doing a lot of the work that we need to understand these announcements that are happening on an ongoing basis, so that we are future ready to respond to them. So, yeah, thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. I hope your words haven't fallen on deaf ears. I'd like to make a comment on Councillor Medeiros' observation about the announcement that Mississauga have made with regard to housing. And I think we need to be future ready for for what we can expect to see come out of Mississauga. And that is that they are, I think, going to be behaving more and more and putting out messaging as a single-tier municipality. And the housing piece is very much around that. And if we don't tune in to what they're doing, then to Councillor Miles' point about, their housing plan and other things that they may put out that presents them as a single-tier municipality, but very much has an impact on the regional tax base and Brampton's contribution to the region appeal. So that's just, I think, a bit of a caution. It's one thing to look at these things as they come out one by one from the City of Mississauga, but it is part of a grander plan, I believe, on their part. So I think our staff and politically, we need to really tune into to some of the actions that are and behavior that's coming out of Mississauga. Otherwise, we're going to be scrambling at the end. It's my opinion, for what it's worth. Thank you.
Okay, the next is we're moving on to Councillor Dillon.
When I asked the question, have we defined what future ready means, I think I do understand, and I think people understand that we do have a plan in place. But what I'm referring to is sometimes it being almost formalized, so that our residents know exactly what we're speaking about. And just to your comments as well, Councilor Miles, sorry, I've relayed that information. What I'm trying to get at is that it's a plan that we can all rally behind, and if there's been work done to really rally our residents in knowing that we are future ready, whether it's some type of how we promote it, and I think one of the a campaign to really rally and to energize our residents, to let them know that, listen, this is what we are doing. We are future ready. We have all these plans in place. So that's what I was trying to get at.
Thank you. Yeah, just thank you for that clarification. And when our Erin O'Hosky on Strategic Communications, she's going to come and talk to us in June about the engagement of the community around many of our activities. And we were actually starting at Brampton, so some exciting things that day. Okay.
Moving on then to public. Oh, can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor Dillon. All in favor? That's carried. Public question period. Is there any member of the public who would like to come forward and ask a question of council on any item that was on the agenda today? Welcome. Could you please state your name?
Hi, my name is Dennis Jubb.
Sorry, could you say that
Dennis
again?
Jubb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a resident of Brampton. I had a question about the trees. You guys touched on the trees today.
Yes.
I was wondering, are residents allowed to pick what they want? Like, I had a deciduous tree before, and I know it's going to be replaced, but I was wondering if I could get a coniferous tree, like a Christmas tree instead, for my front yard. I didn't know if there was a reason why. And also, with the summer coming up, just wondering what the timeline is. I have a great big hole in my front yard, which looks pretty, terrible, and I'd like to do some landscaping this summer to get my front yard looking nice again. So that's my question. I didn't know
So
how to do it.
unfortunately, our forestry staff have left, but, Mr. Patari,
Thank you.
or Mr. Patushka, sorry, can maybe Russ, do you want to just stay at the podium?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Patushka.
Through you, Madam Chair, we've identified a number of species of trees that are native to this area, and those are the ones that we're working with. We do take a look at certain requests that are made by residents. The coniferous tree, though, is something that we try and avoid, especially if it's on public right-of-way because of the harsh climates. But I think we can take this conversation offline, and I'll get this gentleman's name and address, and we can zero in on exactly what's happening on the street.
Okay, yeah, so Mr. Patushka will talk to you and get your information, and then you can have the discussion with our staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Any other questions from members of the public? There being none, we will move into closed session.
Madam Chair, so I've conferred with the city solicitor. The item would be 13.1, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, a property matter.
Okay, so we're going to be moving in camera. We would ask that members of the audience please leave the chambers, and only those staff that need to remain in the chambers at this time.